Nothing we say is investment advice. Please pause on all 3 pages of this disclaimer and read it. Greetings, Algo artisans. Happy Easter. Happy Orthodox Easter. Happy Sunday if you're not celebrating. Happy day for you. We are going to go over the typical charts. We're going to go over Bitcoin, Solana, EURUSD, GBPUSD, USDJPY, USDCAD, GBPJPY, AUDJPY, AUDUSD, USDCHF, SP500 Futures, Dow Futures, NASDAQ Futures, gold, and silver. Before we do that, you get a free algo. Go into the description, click on the link, you get a free algo that you can use to study. Also, if you give us your email, and it doesn't have to be your real first name, we don't care, we'll go ahead and let you know when we're going to do a free workshop. Probably you'll watch me trade for 3 days in a row for the trading session, like a Tuesday through a Thursday. Get to see how I do things. And that's going to be free, so we'll let you know when that is. We'll also let you know when these weekly videos are coming out. All right, so before we look at all those charts, we're going to look at the economic data coming out this week. Now, like last week, it's probably going to be relatively quiet. We had the holidays going into the weekend. We have European holidays coming out of the weekend, especially if you're in the US. That's going to spill over to Monday. And we have Tuesday, not much going on. Wednesday, all the PMIs. So it's going to be 3:15 a.m. for the French PMI, 15 minutes later the German PMI, 4:30 a.m. EST, the British PMI in the US will happen at 9:45 a.m. The US one can affect markets across the board, the rest in their respective markets. Now at 1:15 p.m. Governor Bailey is going to speak. That could affect the pound greatly. Thursday, as it always is, 8:30 a.m. EST, USD unemployment claims. And the rest of the day will be pretty quiet for Down Under. New Zealand, Australia will be on bank holiday, so not much going on with those pairs that day. For them, it'll be Friday. For American traders, it'll be Thursday evening, or for Western traders that are, even in Europe. Now, Friday, right at the European Open, we got British retail sales, 4 AM EST, S&B, that's the Swiss National Bank Chairman Schlegel will speak. We got 8:30 a.m. Canadian news for retail sales. That's the week, pretty quiet week. It could mean just more of a sideways week, kind of like we saw last week. Pretty quiet time. There is a term in trading, sell in May and go away. That has to do with the equities markets. Now, that means that there's probably going to be a lot of action in the Forex markets. There has been a lot of action. And as we jump into the charts here, remember, this is a Trump era market, which means there are probably going to be surprises. Now, there were not any especially large surprises last week, but of course, a week or two ago, we had all the tariff stuff, and the week before that, more tariff stuff, and tariffs. And so markets did a lot of unexpected things. Now, this is a double-edged sword because it can mean that whatever trade you're in, whatever your plan was, just goes out the window. You might even get stopped out, but it gives you more trades. All that volatility is really a trader's paradise. So, okay, you lost a trade, or maybe you won the trade. It's kind of a 50-50 thing, but if you have more trades coming, you could just sit there and rake in the money if you're a trader. Now, if you're not a trader, you're just kind of watching the equities market, watching your stocks fall. You're not really doing much. You're not really spending your time well, if you ask me, right? What we do here at Algo Factory is we give you the tools to learn how to take your finances in your own hand instead of just giving your money to some broker who doesn't care about you. So let's get into the charts, and we'll start with Bitcoin. Lots of sideways last week. I think we'll see more this week. There's always that chance that we see a pop up, but I think it would be short-lived, and I do think ultimately things want to go down in the current environment without any surprises, right? But we might see a bit of a pop-up first and then down, or it could just head down. Last week, the charts wanted to go down, but things got so quiet, there was no volatility, and things just traded within a range. So the move I thought would happen last week, you could see with these blue arrows, I think that might end up happening this week, but we're going to see because there's not a lot of news this week. So we'll go ahead and get rid of our old predictions there. I don't always keep the old predictions up, but they're really relevant this week because last week had so little action that they might be relevant. Now let's take a look at Solana. Similar, we have Solana being a tad more bullish than Bitcoin, but in the end sideways, and if Bitcoin pops up, it'll pop up. If Bitcoin melts down, it'll melt down. And then you can see the old prediction last week of more or less sideways with a tilt down. So when Bitcoin got kind of sideways, people were starting to trade Solana. Now, Bitcoin has been rather stable for weeks, actually. Bitcoin's been stable going back to like the beginning of March. It's really just floated kind of in the 80,000 range with a minor dip to 70K handle. So when things get stable, money starts to flow into the alts as long as the market thinks that Bitcoin will remain stable. We're going to see what goes on with that. I think there's more blood in the general markets, as we're going to see in a little bit with the NASDAQ chart, and I think that's going to bleed over to crypto. And the USDJPY chart is the clue to that. So I know I just gave you a few Easter eggs, and we'll get to those in just a minute. Let's take a look at EURUSD. Okay, so this thing has been bullish. You can see the last 2 weeks worth of predictions I've kept on there because they were relatively accurate. I think had last week not ended in Easter, we would have seen it rise up, and I think we are going to see it rise up. I think it's just going to continue to go up. I've got a couple of levels here where it might run into resistance at 115 or so and at 117. Those are two areas that I think we might see resistance, but I think it's just going to kind of range there and pop up afterwards. Things are very bullish in those pairs. Let's take a look at GBPUSD, a similar pair to the euro. Here we are with the cable, even more bullish, and I think we will see it pop up, and we might even see price go above this 134 area that I have marked out, where I think it may reverse. But that is a very high time frame, strong resistance right there. So it would take a lot for it to pop up, and I think what we might see is a pop up and then a push back down, and then over the next week or two, it might continue up. It just depends on the overall market. Let's take a look at USDJPY. Now, just a reminder here, I don't really use this data to trade. I use it to know which way the wind is blowing. That way, when I am looking at my trades, I can zoom out, say, hey, I think this is the general thing of what's going to happen. And that helps me have a bias in my trading, right? So I don't really use these charts for trading per se, but they're pretty accurate most of the time. Of course, you have all the surprises that make them not accurate. But look at this one here, JPY. Again, the week was quiet last week. It didn't have the power to go below this 142 yen area, right? It just didn't have it. But what we have here are very clear lower highs. And the support is just barely holding on. And I think it's just going to break down. It's just a matter of time before that breaks down. And this is the clue to what the stock market's going to do. When this is so incredibly bearish on the high time frame, that means that the stock market is bearish on the high time frame. This is because this is USD versus JPY. JPY is on the second half of that pair. And what that means is that the Japanese yen is a liquidity source for the stock market. When the stock market, the global equities markets go down, especially the US market, money flows into the JPY. The JPY gets stronger, and therefore this chart goes down because it is USD versus JPY. So as long as this is heading down, it's a clue that the stock market is probably going to want to head down. Now, if this thing starts to pump up, and I mean on the macro, on the high end, it probably means that whatever's been going on in the stock market is coming to an end. And it's been a pretty good predictor for the general wind blow of the stock market. So let's go ahead and take a look at these levels here. Pretty strong support at 141.58. Then you got 139.62. And if it breaks below that, which it very well could, especially if there is some kind of surprise event, then you're looking at 137.24 for that. And I do think there's enough momentum. It's just, it depends on if this week can be strong enough. We might actually see price just kind of range out because this week is relatively quiet. We might just see it develop a range down in this area, so I will add to that as an alternative route there. Okay, so let's take a look at USDCAD. Another bearish move here, and it might not be able to break below 136.54. You might get, again, just a range at the end of the week. That could happen. Otherwise, I do think it could break below. And here in this area, we're basically in a downward price discovery. There's not a lot of supports or old price action giving us clues down below 136.52. So we just kind of have to go with what it looks like might happen. Let's take a look at GBPJPY, the beast. Sideways to up. Now the British pound is rather bullish and it's competing with the JPY. So it's either going to go sideways or it's going to pop above, but I don't expect a large move on this. It's just one of the two. It's going to stay in the range or maybe pop out of the range. Not a lot of price action going on. It's been real choppy, real sideways for a number of weeks now. Let's go to AUDJPY. Okay, so AUDJPY price heading sideways might pop up a little bit. The Aussie dollar has been very bullish lately. It actually was really, really bearish for a long time, so it may be in a bear market rally. It is also correlated to a certain extent with gold. Gold being bullish, maybe pushing the Aussie up a bit, but we see price probably heading up into this older range that is between 91.89 and 95.39 or so. Otherwise, it'll just, I think, head sideways until it makes a decision. Let's take a look at AUDUSD. This is one of the most bullish pairs I've seen in a long time. This is a very long time bearish market now pushing back up, right? So Aussie being bullish, the dollar being bearish, and I think that's just going to crawl up. There is a strong resistance at 65.53, and there is a bit of a resistance right here at 64, but I think it's going to pop right above that. Let's take a look at USDCHF. Okay, USDCHF, another pair that's probably just going to break down, and of course, the USD is a component. If the week gets quiet, you might see a range develop in one of these areas above the 79.7 support or perhaps above this 78.1 support. You might see it range out if things get super quiet. Let's take a look at the SP500. Now, things are looking bearish to me in the equities. There always could be a surprise, but you can see last week's prediction was pretty accurate, and I think it's just going to go ahead and head down. There is a decent support at 48.28 and another one down at 46.48. Price could make it all the way down there. It may also pop up before it does that. It's been known to do so. Could be the PMIs that makes it happen. So that's what I'm expecting on that. And the Dow and the NASDAQ will look very similar. Speaking of the Dow, here it is. Minor support at 38,590, stronger support at 36,750, and then you have 35,990, or basically 36,000. So I think price is going to come down, maybe bounce at this 36,730, or break down right to like 36,000, almost on the dot. Let's look at the NASDAQ. Same pattern, a little more volatile. NASDAQ has been outperforming in a volatility sense. We have a pretty decent support at 16,400 and then just below at 16,100. So I think price will head down, maybe pop up, but then head down and either range out above 16,380 or just above 16,100. Let's take a look at gold. Gold giving 0 Fs. I thought it would go sideways. The whole week, it did break out, as I also thought it would. You can see the secondary prediction of a breakout, and it may very well do the same. Now, it could go sideways. We're seeing a lot of bullish action. There always needs to be some kind of a break, some kind of a pullback, but I think price is going to pretty much head up to 35,000 before we see a major pullback. I don't think it's going to happen this week. Actually, I know I charted it to be happening this week, but you know what? It's pretty darn close. It actually could happen this week. So I've charted it based on Fibonacci's. The most likely level we see before the end of the week is 34.50, but we might see a break away above that in a panic into gold, which would push it up past 35. Let's take a look at silver. Silver bullish, but underperforming gold. I still see it bullish, but I think it's going to break up into a range between 32.76 and 34.20. The new range does seem to be more or less between 32 and 34. So that's what I expect. That's the wrap. Go ahead and get your free algo right there. Links in the description. We'll send you the updates. And we really hope to see you over at Algo Factory. We're pretty good at predicting price. And what we do is we teach people how to predict where price is going to go. We take the data on the screen that you see, and then this data on the bottom, and we help you develop your own method to compile all this data. It's very simple to do. It takes work. It's not get rich quick. It's going to take some time to do, like anything worthwhile. But once you get it, you're going to have the ability to predict price to a certain degree of probability. And when you have that, you can extract money out of the markets. So come on over to algofactory.tech. We will teach you how to trade like a hedge fund pro. We hope to see you Tuesday morning, 8:30 a.m. sharp. Have a good weekend.